Hey there, good morning. Episode 6 of Around the Bend podcast. I have Austin Lee, actually from our permanent hiring team here at Robert Half. How are you doing
Doing
this
pretty
morning,
good. Blake,
Austin?
how are you doing?
Pretty good. I know that this is kind of a hard time for everyone. And in fact, the reason I wanted to make this podcast is this week in particular, I've had so many people just reaching out, trying to look for new opportunities, look for new um, really not just opportunities, just trying to put food on the table. Because in tech right now, there's just so many layoffs, and I thought if we do a podcast, maybe something a little bit more hopeful to give people an idea of on the market as a whole, it might abate some of the fears
Yeah,
that
yeah,
people are
sounds good.
having.
So do you have any questions that you have that we could talk about, or just we're just gonna bounce off each other?
Well, yeah, yeah, just kind of free flow. I mean, what do you see? I think it would be good for people to understand like your background a little. So you work on all the internal hires here at Robert Half, and Robert Half is a large
Yeah,
S&P 500 company. So just from
yeah.
what are we in March? So from last March to this March, how would you say the overall hiring curve has been here at
But
Robert
yeah, so
Half?
from last March, so I actually just started December 2021. That's like when I started my job at
Okay,
Robert Half. So I actually got my first permanent placement in March last year. So I
I
know when
see.
I guess started a billing in March, um, like there were a lot more job orders. Everyone says, or at least in permanent placement, everyone says it was raining job orders. Like you didn't really have to do any marketing for them during the pandemic, and
Hmm.
when the start of the pandemic, and then up until probably like around this time, 2023, things like not
Hmm.
things aren't to a halt, but it's definitely the market has changed. It's not really raining job
Hmm.
orders. There's a lot more efforts for marketing to find leads and stuff like that. So yeah, that's kind of the shift from last year.
And also too, I'd say because I'm more on like contract to hire, like external. So it's like we've sort of seen like the permanent hiring drop off. Then we're kind of there's like a gap period of like a couple months where even though the companies still have all this work, they usually need like contractors to
Hmm.
backfill a lot of these jobs. And we're starting to see that starting to kind of take off. But for there was a couple months where the permanent hiring was gone, or not gone, but reducing down. We
Yeah,
saw rounds of layoffs, and that's kind of what I've seen in my network as well. But I think if we kind of give people a picture of what's going to be going forward, like we see the Fed raising rates, we see kind of this other financial like, oh, what's going to happen here with like Signature Bank, Silicon Valley Bank. One of the Jeff I had on the podcast last week. From there, I think we're kind of in like a bumpy time where we're probably going to see another like 3-4 months of like rough hiring. Even people with a lot of experience are going to be applying to a lot of positions, before they get that hit. And I think it would be helpful too, just giving people maybe some of your best tips and tricks, being
yeah.
like an insider, here in an S&P 500 company. Um, what kind of makes someone stand out in like a
Yeah.
positive
Well,
way?
first to give some, I guess, good news is that I wasn't working in this field, before the pandemic since I got hired just last year or about 2 years ago, 2021 December. So I've heard that kind of the market is kind of shifting. It's not really in a recession, but more so as in just before COVID. So it's not like they're really trying to say that like really not to worry. It's just definitely a shift from when it's raining job orders, but it's still kind of the same as pre-pandemic. What um, like that's what every like recruiter is saying that has been working at Barber Half for quite a while. But yeah, but to go back
Hmm.
to some tips and tricks to um, I guess get attention from hiring managers if you want to find a new job. I would definitely say um, I guess the resume, I guess, is the a key thing that recruiters look for. That's at least what I look for. And then being things that we look for, it's kind of, I mean, it's not out of your control, but having good tenure at a company, seeing that if you're loyal to a company, um, I mean, that's what I guess perm recruiters look for. If we are looking for a perm candidate, but if I mean you're a contractor, I guess that doesn't really matter. But another thing that we look for is just very organized resume, not everything's all over the place. For sure, chronological order, um, and yeah, just highlighting the key skills. I guess I don't. That's all I have for you on the resume stuff.
Well, it's not just resume stuff. Like even when they're going through the process, like what makes someone really stand out? Because I know now any of the roles that we have open, we'll have like 5, 10, 20. I mean, maybe even a lot more than that applying. And even though Robert Half's not like the super
Yeah,
big
yeah.
name company, like I don't know, like Workday or Apple or Google, like we still, I'm seeing like a lot of applicants, at least when I
hmm
see them on LinkedIn. Um, what makes somebody stand out in that
Yeah, so I
process?
think a key thing that I look for in a candidate is just really good communication. Um, so throughout the interview process, I guess I'm kind of the person, their middleman. I communicate with the client and then also with the candidate. So someone that just has really good communication time, doesn't take a couple days to reply, and is also like kind of always available when I need to shoot them a phone call
Hmm.
or an email. And even if they don't pick up the first time, just being yeah, very communicative, like saying like, oh, I'm in a meeting, I'll get back to you as soon as possible, or whenever the meeting ends, and not just leaving me in the dark. Yeah, that's one thing.
Hmm.
I can't think of any others right now. Um,
Because I think it's hard for people to understand, like, oh, when they're getting constantly called by a recruiter, like, it's good for them to kind of understand, like, hey, why are you doing what you're doing? Like, maybe if you could explain, like, maybe an internal process, because I think the internal process here is like really similar to a lot of other S&P
mhm.
500
Yeah,
companies.
so I guess the internal process and why you are getting calls from recruiters is that a lot of things are a little not super time sensitive, but time is definitely a factor. So I say for like when we're talking to a client, since we do provide a service, as in like providing candidates for them, one of our uh, like key selling points is the time and how fast we get a candidate. So that's why I think when a recruiter
Hmm.
reaches out to you, there is that like sense of urgency when reaching out to a candidate because
Hmm.
we do sell ourselves as saying like we'll find like a really good candidate for you in this amount of time. So that's kind of the reason why I think when recruiters reach out, there is that urgency, sense of urgency.
And I think it's important actually for people out there to understand. So, like, you only
Yeah.
work internal. So, it's when you say client, you're referring to hiring managers
Yes.
within
Yes.
Robert Half. So, talent acquisition as a whole, just so like people can, because we're in it all day. So, like, of course, it makes sense to us. But, like, from an outsider looking in, people in talent acquisition, it's almost like the hiring manager is,
hmm
their client for as an internal recruiter. So, it's like if that client, that internal hiring manager is really hard to work with, causing a bunch of issues, the internal recruiting teams will prioritize
Yes.
people that work
Exactly.
well with them.
Exactly.
And it's the same with a candidate. So if you think you're, like, I'll just say it. I mean, if somebody thinks they're super hot shit and they don't need to respond to recruiters and this, that, the other, and then they come back 2 days later and they're like, oh, well, what's going on here? It's like there's already
Yeah.
5 other people that, moved ahead of you. And I think in technology too, we sometimes get um, a little bit of an attitude. Like some of the people I've met, they have like an attitude, especially like in the individual contributor space, like, oh, well, well, I can do this, this, and this. And it's like, well, if you don't have the basic like communication, you don't have the basic like time prioritization, it doesn't
hmm
really matter, unfortunately. I think one of the funny things, because I went to San Jose State and we're definitely not a school at the level of like Stanford and
Yeah.
UC Berkeley and UC
Hmm.
Santa Cruz and whatnot. But they're like, they said like, oh, the candidates of, or, students from San Jose State power Silicon Valley because they like get the basic, like let's say our, skill set is like medium high, but it's like we get those basic communication, basic like business understanding, hustle mode, right? And that's what gets so many people into those companies. So it's an
Hmm.
important
Yeah.
factor,
And then yeah, to paint a like
and
a paint like
it
a
also
better picture is like, say I presented three candidates to a hiring manager on Monday, and you respond on Wednesday. Oh, like, oh, and then saying like, oh, you're interested. Like, I'm not gonna delay the whole process of their getting those three candidates feedback just to present you if those three candidates are really good. So yeah, I just wanted to paint that picture. Yeah.
yeah, I think it's important too that people, I used to, before working
Hmm.
in recruiting, I actually had a really negative perception of
Uh-huh.
recruiting for a long time until I worked in it. Because I had bad experiences. There was like kind of shady recruiting companies, like tiny recruiting companies trying to like, recruit me out of San Jose State. And they were just kind of, they like, I used to sell used cars and they just gave me like a used cars salesman vibe, like just kind of sleazy, like a bullshitter can like
Hmm.
detect a bullshitter kind of thing. And I was just like, I don't like what I'm
Uh-huh.
seeing. You know what I mean? And then when I was looking for a new role, I was like, oh, what's this Robert Half technology account manager? I was like, let's see what that is. And I hit the LinkedIn apply. And then it was crazy how like each round of interview I went. So I went with like some internal recruiter. I think he's
Hmm.
out in the Midwest. And then they passed me along to Andy. And then they passed me along to Megan and Jenny. And I was like, it really was like, I was like, oh, okay, this is an interesting
Yeah.
little process, and luckily I kind of fell sideways into recruiting because I thought I was going to do technology sales from when I started my search, and I was actually really happy I landed here because it's just a different. I feel like recruiting, real estate, probably car sales because I was in that too, and like
Hmm.
service providers, those big MSPs, they are 90% crappy and 10% are like
Yeah.
quality. And I landed in the
Yeah,
the
yeah,
quality
yeah,
space.
yeah. Good for me too, because yeah, this is my first job out of college, so I think it was like honestly luck, because I wouldn't really know anything about like the job market or the industry coming out. So yeah, I got super lucky as well.
I think that's kind of an important thing that people understand too is like in the Bay Area, it's so like switch job, switch job, switch job. You know, it's rare that you'll find a company where you're like, wow, I actually like working here. I like the team I'm on. Because a lot of times it is just like
Hmm.
time filling, money based, like how much money am I making? If I'm not making a ton, then
Yeah,
whatever, I'm out of here kind of thing. And it's kind of interesting how like really our job is just relationships and like
yeah,
networking and helping
exactly.
people. Like it's like, hey, let's help you do this, to do that, to do this. And that's what I feel like I do all day. I don't feel like I'm doing anything crazy. I'm just like
Hmm.
connecting people to people,
Yeah,
and that's like our job. Um, where when you're doing like maybe like technology based sales, which I was like, oh, that's what I got to do. It's like
hmm,
very impersonal. Like maybe you have a relationship with your client, sort of, but it's just not. It's not like at the same level. Like especially too now, like just interesting to see like if we can find somebody that's in a tough position, help them get into that new role.
yeah.
It's a good feeling, and I'm probably sure you
Yeah, yeah,
felt that way
exactly,
too.
exactly. And then yeah, it
Uh,
sounds like, I mean, I never been in tech sales before, but it sounds like yeah, this is definitely more personal, and I definitely feel that throughout my day talking to candidates. And then when I fill them, they're just like super grateful that I found them the role and stuff like that. So yeah, I definitely agree with you there.
hmm, good stuff. Yeah, I mean it's what I think is kind of the differentiating factor because I'm sure a lot of people have dealt with recruiters in the past is like, you know, if they I can't speak about other companies because I really haven't done recruiting in other firms, but it's like if someone respects our time, we're
Hmm.
going to respect their time. If someone blows us off, I'm not going to blow them off, but if some, other people are getting back to me quicker,
Yeah,
that's who I'm going
exactly.
to go with, because I show that they're
Hmm.
respecting our time. Um, and I mean, that's just kind of a sidetrack now, us just like kind of whining about stuff that we don't like, but I think it's okay. I think it's if people understand what goes on behind the scenes, like it
Hmm.
makes a little bit more sense. And also, just like if you have a really good real estate agent, because my aunt does real estate, it's like if you have somebody partner with you to help you with these things, it makes a big difference. And are they gonna find you something right away? No, but it just you're increasing your probability. So I would say definitely if anyone is in the market, we'd be glad to try and help out, make connections, go through our network to try and see what we
Hmm.
can do to assist you. For your next role, whether that's like contract, permanent, contract to hire, there's a lot of different opportunities always coming up. And I think that's one thing people should keep in mind is like it's a
Yeah.
tough time right now. We get it. We're not blind to what's going on. But I was actually Andy was talking about there was like a live broadcast from LinkedIn, and they're kind of publishing all the stats of hiring and firing and what's open and not open. And I think that's probably a good data set to draw on. And they said like it's weird because some roles like some DevOps roles are still
Hmm.
hiring like crazy, and then some other roles like let's say Python developers are going like not way down,
Hmm.
but it's like recalibrating. So there's still always going to be a
Yeah.
need in the tech market, but I think we're seeing super big companies do layoffs and like medium large companies doing layoffs, but there's still a lot of companies that are hiring. And I'm sort of being hopeful and hoping that because I was listening to another kind of a talk by this information security company called BlackRock Security, and they're like, if all these companies shed all of these smart, talented people, you'll have a bunch of smart, talented people basically sitting around not knowing what to do. And that'll either lead them to go off to new companies where they'll kind of add value and make
Hmm.
things more interesting and really improve the teams there. Or those people are going to unify together and start making new companies. So we might see like I think there's going to be like a new wave of startups, a new kind of birth wave. And we're going to see Apple and Google and Amazon maybe shift into these more like
Hmm.
old school companies. They're going to start to become like IBM
Okay.
style. Maybe
Yeah.
it's not going to be right away, obviously. It's like it takes time, but I think we're going to see like a whole new wave of companies that were like, "Whoa, like I never would have thought of that." Like, Uber was created in like 2008, 2009. So
Yeah.
like a really bad time. Like everyone would be like, "Why the hell how could you have created a company in 2008 when
Hmm.
everything's
Yeah.
failing,
No,
you
that's a
know?"
good prediction. I never thought about it like that. But yeah, I think yeah, when you were talking about the recalibrating, when Andy was talking about that, I definitely agree because I think at least all the big companies are definitely trying to prepare for something that might happen. But yeah, I think everything's just recalibrating, and everyone's just trying to prepare. But if it doesn't happen, then yeah, it doesn't happen. So yeah.
Well, everything's always changing, and I think it's important for people to like I've been talking with some different like friends and clients that are definitely in the higher kind of like let's say like C-level, senior director space, VPs, and like I think it's important people understand like where they kind of
Hmm.
fit into things. So like if you're an individual contributor in tech, like let's say you're like a developer or like database admin, you work in IT, like a help desk, something like that, your search is going to be a lot shorter realistically, even in this tough market. Like let's say a couple months, let's say during COVID, it was like two
Hmm.
weeks, which is unheard of. But during normal times, that was like a 1 month, 1.5 month process. And it's a little bit harder right now. So, like, I would say people should realistically expect like 1 to 3 months. If you're kind of on a role that's more individual contributor, if you're a manager, that probably goes up a little. That probably moves to like 2 to 4 months. And then if you're very high level, you're like director, VP, even C-level people, like that search can take
Yeah.
a long time. That could be like a 4 to 10 month search, depending on what exact role you're looking for and things like that. And even too, you know, this is just me getting real now, is like, there's a lot of people, they got a payment on their AMG Mercedes or their M3, and they got the mortgage, and they were a senior director somewhere or a VP, and they're like, oh, okay, gotta
Yeah.
make some payments. I would say people should realistically look at short-term project work as well, whether that's like a contract or contract to hire route. Don't I've seen some people, they get like, oh, that's below me. And, I'm just being real, person to person. If you got some financial needs, like
Yeah.
put the ego aside. I know that in Silicon Valley we get a little bit like full of ourselves. Probably I do
Hmm.
too at times. So it's good to just see what opportunities are out there and just be open to it. As like a stopgap, um, in the meantime, because there's always going to be a new role, there's always going to be a new company, there's always going to be like another thing that's
Yeah.
going to happen. And I feel like people got to be a little bit open to what's out there. And from what I've seen, people are very open to kind of different possibilities and things. um, it's just that finding that right opportunity is a
Hmm.
stressful
Yeah.
process.
I haven't like talked to any, I guess, any people in that level, because all the roles that I filled have been like kind of like mid level. But yeah, I think that's a great tip. Yeah, if they got expenses, because since they're so used to having that bigger paycheck, they definitely do have bigger expenses. So you got to pay it off somehow.
Well, it's funny because the only reason I mention that is like, I've some of my dad's friends, some of them have made like a ton of money, but then they're also
Hmm.
burning that money like crazy. So, I think it's tech. Sometimes big gains, big spending can go hand in hand. So, even people that are individual contributors making like 2 to 400K a year, it's like,
Yeah.
got to be a little bit cautious.
Yeah.
Don't go
Yeah.
crazy.
Exactly.
you know. I mean, dang, you even look around in recruiting, some people, they hit a
Yeah.
good month and all of a sudden they're trying to buy a freaking, I don't know, a brand new
Hmm.
Mercedes or something. So
Yeah.
it's
My team always told me. Yeah,
yeah,
my
I
team always
think
told me
it's
to be like super, or like a little less or a little more frugal in this job, because
yeah,
like you never know when it could be a bad month, or yeah, like right now when the job market shifts, there could be a pretty extended time period where um like there's less job orders and stuff, so essentially less money for you. So yeah, they definitely said to be a little more cautious.
100%. I mean, there's some years where it's like, during COVID, just so people understand what was happening, like for recruiters, and people maybe on the outside sales part of recruiting, this was like, that was an amazing time. That was an amazing 2 years that was unseen in all like
Hmm.
of the past 30 years. Like, I'm young, I'm in my 20s, but like, people in our company and other people were like that had 30, 40 years under their belt, be like, this is
Yeah.
like an insane time where literally you do zero work. There's just there's people placing job orders and like saying, hey, I need this, person ASAP. And then they had to pay more than ever. And so it was just a really unnatural market that was kind of like pushed to this breaking point. And then as soon as the economy slows down even a little, it goes from like sky high to like
Yeah.
comes back to reality. And that's kind of what we're seeing, this recalibration in technology, I think, is like we're going back to a normal job market. Because I think there was some good stats, just like the general job market. So not technology and not here in the Bay, but like during COVID, we added like something crazy, like
Yeah.
600,000 jobs
Wow.
a
Yeah.
month.
Yeah.
But from like from like 2010 to 2018 or 19, which were still like good economic times, we were adding as a country like 200, 150K, 200K. So during COVID, there was like this big slump where like a lot of people got temporarily laid off, and then it went like a little bit down, and then it went crazy up, like 600,000 new jobs a month, to the point where it's like there was so much economic activity. The government was like giving everyone stimulus checks, and then it was like so high that even in technology too, all these companies were like, whoa, our demand's going crazy up. We're trying to build new websites, build new applications, do this new thing for clients, and they just didn't have the talent force. So then it was just like a scalping war of all these companies going to other companies trying to, bid people up and up and up. And then it sort of came back down to reality a little bit, and we had all
Hmm.
these layoffs and stuff. But I think the toughest part for me is like, especially like there's somebody that I know that used to work at Robert Half. They were like the head of talent, or like really the head of human resources,
Oh wow.
got laid off. Yeah, like kind of really suddenly
Hmm.
after building this whole team. And it was more so just because, it wasn't like a purely financial reason. It was just like the company was like, well, actually, no, I think it was. They were like, oh, you're doing a great job, but we'd like to save a little bit more money. And it wasn't like an overall smart
Hmm.
expense to cut kind of thing. So I see companies too, they kind of are, some of them are reacting in more of
Yeah.
like a fearful way than like a business based approach. Um, that's where I think this stuff is frustrating. Like if a business is legitimately like, hey, we cannot like continue on with this, or maybe those positions don't meet our strategic objective, that kind of makes sense. But I'm seeing like some people getting laid off that are super great at their job. And I think it's people take that as like a personal thing,
Hmm.
like, oh, what did I do wrong? And it's hard because actually one of my clients, he was at a bunch of big companies. Like it's
Yeah,
hard not to take
exactly.
it personal, but you really can't don't take it personal because it doesn't is not a reflection of
Yeah,
you at
yeah. I
the end
think
of
it's
the
just
day.
something that the companies or the people higher up think that it's necessary for, the better of the company, and it's like just out of their control kind of. So yeah, I wouldn't put too much stress on it.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of tough though, especially when you work
Yeah.
all day, all week, all month, all year, and then you kind of get hit with that. But, I think here in the Bay and probably throughout the country, because I know we work with a lot of
Hmm.
remote work people as well, we're going to have new opportunities. New stuff's always going to come around the corner. So it's like, I feel like our message to people right now is like, whatever you were doing, whether you were like a coder or a help desk or a senior VP of strategy, right now you are now a salesperson. Your job changed. If you got laid off or if you don't have a role, your job changed and you are now like an account
Yeah,
salesperson for
exactly.
yourself. And you got to market yourself and rep yourself and get your
Hmm.
information out there,
Yeah, yeah, and I think
and I
yeah, and then
think
you could
that's
also you don't have to do it alone. Like at least on our side, we can definitely help out. Like I mean, we might not have job orders for you, but we can definitely connect. And then we can be,
mhm.
a second set of eyes. Since Robert Half is a really big, recruiting agency, the biggest in the world. We definitely have eyes on a lot of different job orders, and stuff like that. So if they do come up, we can definitely stay connected, and then let you know about those. After we connect. So yeah.
Mhm. And it's always changing and there's always going to be something new, so I think it's reach out, see what we can do, where we can help out, and you know don't give up hope, because I know it's some people are taking these layoffs like to heart, like, oh, what did I do? Or maybe that job was a big part of
Hmm.
their personality, and we just it's hard, and nobody likes hearing this, but it's like we just got to keep rolling with the punches and just got
Yeah.
to keep
Yeah.
going. And then also too, I know that just in my own personal network, I know some people are on like different visa
Hmm.
statuses and things like that, and it can be extremely stressful. So that's why I'd say partnering with a recruiter, whether it's Robert Half or any of the other ones that reach out, I would say in this time, if you're in that situation and listening, I would definitely, any recruiter that reaches out, just try and, listen to what they got to say. It's really important just to get into a new role if you're in some kind of
Hmm.
time sensitive visa, rather than waiting for the perfect
Yeah,
role. So
exactly.
the advice is, a little bit different. It kind of goes back to the people with financial
Hmm.
obligations and whatnot. Like sometimes it's better just to get back out there than to
Hmm.
to look for
No, that
perfection.
I had a candidate that was in that situation where, like, yeah, that situation's crazy where if they don't find a role in, like, a couple months, they got to go back, which is yeah, that's just crazy. But yeah, I had a candidate. Um, she had to, yeah, we placed her and she was like really worried, like, oh, is it gonna be on time, stuff like that. But yeah, that's just like a crazy situation.
Yeah, and unfortunately here in the Bay, there's a lot of people in that situation. So that's where, partnering with the right kind of recruiting firm or multiple recruiting firms, like, really is just what's necessary. I had a conversation with a guy this morning, um, he's got
Yeah.
30 days
Oh,
left, so it's like, if I can, I know, I'm like, if I can throw you a
yeah.
bone, I will, I'll do everything I can to help out, one of our clients'
Hmm.
family members. And it's just,
Hmm.
it's
Yeah.
tough, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's not a good situation for sure.
definitely not. But I mean, that's what our job is. That's kind
Hmm.
of where we come in. Is our role is just to help people find jobs and help companies
Yeah.
meet their needs. Um, and also, too, I'd just say, like, in a more general sense, if there's anybody that's listening to this, or is saw the caption, it's kind of, if you want some help, or you got, even just have questions, feel free to reach out to Austin or myself, or really anyone else in our firm, because we do have a bunch of specializations. So, like, Austin and I just do technology, but there's people that do accounting, they do finance, they do, like,
Hmm.
admin staff, HR, all kinds of different things. So there's a lot of different opportunities at any given time, not only like within our company. So if somebody's listening to this and it's a little bit more, you're more in like a sales role or a recruiting role, like, different teams are always hiring, and I see that all the time. Like, even even one of the guys in legal was like, "Oh, I'm looking for a new
Hmm.
account executive." No, and I was like, "Oh, wow!" I was like, "You guys are still hiring?" He's like, "Oh, all the
Yeah.
time." I was like, "Okay, sounds good." So I think, hopefully this is a little bit more of a message of hope and something that, like, pulls the curtain back, and people can be like, "Oh, wow, okay, now I understand what's going on behind the scenes a little bit better." So, when Austin is trying to get a hold of you, make
Yeah.
sure to pick up that phone call,
Yeah, yeah, please pick up. Nah, I wouldn't like your business, but I would definitely love to connect for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, this is just a more relaxed kind of chill podcast. We don't have any specific, uh, we actually were just talking about this yesterday, and we are like, you know what? We should put out something a little bit more positive and a little bit more like recruiting oriented. Um, see if it helps anyone out there. And it's, yeah, so this is not gonna, we're not gonna edit it anything out. All the blemishes and everything will be here, and just kind of show that Austin and I are here, and other people on our team, we're just more here as an extra
Yep,
resource
yep.
for
And
you.
then yeah, I know Blake is gonna post it on LinkedIn. Shout out Blake Allen on LinkedIn. Connect with him.
Actually, if you really want, like, if I'm gonna get really shameless and just rep my own podcasting, I'm gonna. You should also follow me on
Oh,
Apple
cool.
Podcasts, like, and subscribe on
Okay,
YouTube.
bet, bet. Dude, I don't even. I'll subscribe for sure. I'm not even subscribed.
See, look,
Yeah.
look, I got a new
W W.
subscriber, guys, already. Austin for the win. Okay, cool. I mean, I have to. Sounds like you have some other stuff going, and I got some stuff going. But thank you for taking the time out, Austin. And yeah, maybe
Yeah,
we'll
yeah.
do
No, I
another one of these
appreciate you
soon.
having me on. I'll probably see you in a couple weeks. In the office or something.
Yeah, I know. We all work remotely, so people are like, "What the hell? These guys work together and they never see each other." You're like, "Yeah, no, that's the Bay
Yeah.
Area remote work culture for anyone
Hmm.
not from around here. We all hide in our rooms." Okay, cool, man. Well, have a
All right.
great
Yeah.
day, and
Talk
we'll
soon.
talk soon. Okay.